Hi boys and girls, welcome to Everyday Math Lesson 8.4, Equivalent Fractions. The materials that you'll need today, notebook paper, pencil, math journal, your template, and then HomeLink 8.4. If you don't have HomeLink 8.4, that's okay. Still follow along with the lesson and you could record your answers in either your notebook or on a whiteboard. Let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is go over our math boxes from the previous lesson. So if you could open up your math journal to page 194 and we'll go over our answers. If you're noticing that you have any mistakes, please fix those with your pencil and eraser. For the first question, we need to color the figure 1/4 blue, 1/4 yellow, and then half red. So yours should look something like this. For the second one, circle the figure that has only one line of symmetry, and you should have picked the triangle and then drawn the one line of symmetry. The other figures, you would have found more than one line of symmetry. For question 3, complete the table. So we know that 1 yard equals 3 feet. So for each of these, I'm either multiplying or dividing by 3. So I can think 2 times 3, or adding 2 3 times, I would get 6. Now when I'm given 9, I need to think 9 divided by 3, or 9 split into 3 pieces. So out would come 3. Then 5 times 3 would be 15. When I'm given 30, I need to divide 30 by 3, so I would have 10. And then for the last one, you could pick. So I put in 6 and multiplied by 3 to get 18. For question 4, show one way to make $1.28. So I have 4 quarters, which I know is $1, then 25 to bring me to $1.25, and then 3 pennies. So I would have 26, 27, and 28. For question 5, circle the event that is likely to happen, and I circled you will have homework. And then for our last question, number 6, which unit makes sense? Choose the best answer. And the best answer would be 8 ounces. If I had 8 pounds, that's the other one that would be talking about weight, but that would be way too much. Otherwise, I'd be talking about measuring or talking about how much is inside with capacity for my 8 cups. So double check to make sure you have yours before moving on to the next part of the lesson. So please use either your notebook or a whiteboard and marker if available. If the speed is too fast, pause as often as needed. So for this first question, can you make 12 circles? And we'll pretend that those are pennies. And then will you circle half of your group of pennies? And how many are in half of the group? Press pause and play when you're ready to check. All right, so I drew my 12 pennies and I circled half of them, and so half of 12 is 6 pennies. Let's try a couple more like this. This time, so we still have our 12 pennies, but will you circle 1/3 of the group? So divide your pennies into 3 equal groups and tell me how many pennies are in 1/3 of your group. Press pause and play when you're ready to check. So you can see this time I lined up my pennies a little bit different so that I could have 3 equal groups. And then I circled one of those 3 groups so you can see that I had 4 pennies in 1/3 of my groups. For this next one, we still have 12 pennies, but now we're going to split them into fourths. So could you circle 1/4 of the group and then tell me how many pennies that is? Press pause and play when you're ready to check. So I realigned my pennies so that I have 4 groups, and you can see that I circled one of the 4 groups, so I know that 3 pennies would be 1/4 of 12. We have one more problem kind of like this, but we're going to switch our way of thinking a little bit. So I'm thinking of a pile of pennies, and there are 9 pennies in half of the pile. So how many would be in the whole thing? Press pause and play when you're ready to check. So if I know that half is 9, I could think 9 plus 9, or 9 times 2. So I would know that my total would be 18 pennies. So now you can put your notebook to the side, and we'll now talk about HomeLink 8.4. Homelink 8.4 looks like this, where I'm going to ask that you shade half of the rectangle and then tell me how many fourths did you shade. Maybe let's try that first one together before talking about the rest of the page. So when I shaded half of the rectangle, it looks something like this. And then I can see that I shaded in 2 out of those 4 pieces. So half is the same thing as 2/4. So now if we go back and look at question 2, you're going to shade half of this rectangle and then tell me how many eighths did you shade. For question 3, shade 1/4 of the squares. So you're going to want to try to split this whole thing into 4 equal parts and then tell me how many of the little squares did you shade in. And then for the last one, if you can split it into 4 equal parts to shade 1/4 and then tell me how many eighths. Why don't you try 2, 3, and 4 and then press play when you're ready to check 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so for question 2, I shaded in half of the rectangle, and so you can see that I shaded in 4/8. So 1/2 is the same thing as 4/8. For question 3, I'm shading in 1/4, so you can see I divided this and thinking about this into 4 equal parts. And so 1/4 is the same thing as 4/16 because I shaded in 4 out of a total of 16 of the boxes. For question 4, shade 1/4 of the squares. So if I imagine this being split into 4 equal parts and I'm shading in one of those equal parts, you can see that I shaded in 2 out of the 8 squares. So 1/4 is the same thing as 2/8. Let's look at number 5 to try this. For question 5, they're asking us to shade 1/5 of the rectangle and then to tell us how many 20ths you solved, or how many 20ths we shaded in. And then for questions 6 and 7, if you want to solve those, we'll talk about those answers too. So why don't you press pause, solve problems 5, 6, and 7, and then press play when you're ready to check. So for question 5, I'm shading in 1/5 of the rectangle. So I split that into 5 equal pieces and shaded in one of those bars. And I can see that I shaded in a total of 4 out of the 20. So 1/5 is the same thing as 4/20. For question 6, I have 130 minus 30. Well, if I take away 30 from 130, I know that I have 100 left. And for the last question, number 7, I have 37 plus 45. And maybe you chose to stack this one on the side. That would be a good idea. If I'm thinking about, well, I know that 30 plus 40 is 70. And I know that 7 plus 5 is 12. So I can think, well, 70 plus 10 is 80 plus 2 more would give me a total of 82. But again, if you chose to stack that on the side, that would be a really good idea also. So double check to make sure that you have your page correct before going on to math boxes. For math boxes today, we're looking at page 195. I'll talk about the directions and then I'll ask that you complete this page on your own. When you're all done, if you can take a picture and add that picture to Seesaw for your classroom teacher, we will go over this page in our next video. So for question number 1, you're filling in the missing numbers and they only give us one number. They just give us 1,217. So you're going to want to think, what would 10 less than that number be? For question 2, you're thinking about how many months in 1 year, in a half a year, in a fourth of a year, and then in 2 years. For question 3, circle the digits in the hundreds place for each of these numbers. For question 4, there are 9 dinosaurs, 3 are plant eaters. Which fraction shows how many are plant eaters? Fill in the circle next to the best answer. For question 5, you're going to draw a triangle and then measure each side to the nearest inch. And you can record your measurements on the side here. And then the last question, number 6, count the squares to find the area. And then you can record how many squares you found. All right, I'll see you next time.